Hey guys, welcome to part 2 of How to Buy a Sailboat. The goal of these 2 episodes is to help you get out there boat shopping, make things easier, less confusing, and also avoid any pitfalls and get the most bang for your buck. Last week we covered how to narrow down what kind of boat you actually need based on what sort of sailing you're going to do, how to find some boats that meet your needs, and what to come armed with before you go look at one. This week on everything you need to know, the continuation of how to buy a sailboat. Before we get into it with this episode, there's a YouTube channel that I watch that's actually a friend of mine. It's called The Digital Mermaid. And what she's doing is building her own lithium battery bank. It blows my mind because she knows way more than I do. And she's going to use it to repower electrically her CNC Landfall 38. If you're into this electrical thing and these batteries and all that kind of stuff, or anything to do with that, check out her YouTube channel. It's absolutely awesome. I'll leave a link in the description. So if you guys followed the last episode on the 5 steps to buying a sailboat, you know that step 1 was narrowing down which boat we need. And we used this example, this 343. But this process sort of applies to any boat for any purpose. We needed one at that example for 80 to 100 grand and close enough to drive to. And we said that we're going to be in the Carolinas on the US East Coast. We also specified that we wouldn't be crossing oceans. We're just going to join the Caribbean Cruising Club, and we're not going to get into anything too crazy. So comfort was probably our biggest concern, and we found that Tidy Beneteau 343 to use as our example boat, and it came in under budget at 78 grand, which leaves us a lot of room to improve the boat, maybe some solar panels or a really big anchor. Step 2 out of the 5 steps was researching the boat, and we found that 78 grand was on the low side, and we also found a whole bunch of common problems with that boat by doing a bunch of reading and research, while we ignored the armchair sailors who hate everything except the very specific boat that they swear by, even though they probably don't own one. Step 3 is where this episode picks up, and that is we're going to go look at some boats. And we know the holy trinity of expensive problems on any boat we might buy. And those things are having to replace the sails, replace the standing rigging, or replace the engine. Any one of those things is going to be more than 10 grand and might be a deal breaker for us. Now, when people go look at sailboats with the interest of buying them, they usually have sort of a checklist in their head, but mine's probably different, and let me run you through it. First, as you walk up the boat, you kind of want to study it. Is it clean? Are the decks well organized and sort of tidy? Do we get a good feel that the owner really cared for the boat and it had proper upkeep? And the topside usually translates, if it's really poorly upkept, to everything inside. I personally also look at how the boat is tied up. A good caring owner will have spring lines and probably some fenders. And what did they take the time to cover up? Is there sunbrella coverings on the wheel, the pedestal, the winches, the handrails? I like to see when somebody takes the time to protect the boat. As soon as you get on board the boat, your goal is to basically avoid paying a surveyor by finding out anything major wrong with it that it's going to cause you to walk away before you have to pay a surveyor. The first thing I do is I take my shoes off and I walk on the deck. Now, it's important to walk the decks with no shoes, because if you put some weight on your heels as you walk, you'll actually be able to feel any major soft spots in the core of the deck. You'll also hear delamination as the fiberglass unsticks itself from the core under your feet. This may seem odd, but walk every inch of the deck and the coach top with most of the weight on your heels. And this might save you a $1,200 survey. And while you're walking, it's a good time to check for corrosion on the rigging, anything topside that is broken or of poor upkeep. And at the bow, check the anchor and the roller if it has one. Also look over the windlass if it has one of those. A good visual inspection goes a long way. Open up the anchor locker. Nobody does this. Open the anchor locker and look at the condition of the chain in the rode. Look at the fasteners that hold the chain to the rode and the chain to the anchor. Is there a snubber in there? Is there snubber gear in there? That stuff can get expensive, so it's nice to know if the boat has it. And what anchor does it have? Are you going to have to spend $1,000 on a bigger anchor right after you buy this thing? Next, come aft a little bit and sight up the mast. First stand in front of it and look straight up it, and then stand at its side and look straight up it. Does the mast look straight, or does it look like it was tuned wrong? A wobbly, bendy, weird tune is a good sign that the owner didn't care and it's of poor upkeep, and this may also be a good time to inspect the furlings. The running rigging, sometimes people make a big deal out of this. The broker might say it has brand new running rigging, or you might say, oh, the running rigging needs to be replaced, I don't like it. Those are the ropes and control lines that control the sails. It's so much less important than you think overall on an $80,000 boat because it costs so little to replace. It's sort of negligible. We're just buying rope. If it looks tired, take note of it because you can make that a point when you do make an offer a little bit later. In the cockpit, make sure you turn the steering wheel from lock to lock, and it should feel smooth all the way through the rotations without any binding and no difference in the effort it takes to turn it. If there's something wrong below with whatever the steering mechanism is, you'll kind of feel it as you put the wheel through its motions. And inspect the gauge panel for the diesel, as well as any electronics that happen to be at the helm. And take a second to spin every single winch that you see. Make sure they move freely and they ratchet properly and they lock. When you get inside, save yourself some time and go right at the big ticket items. I see a lot of people go into boats and sort of wander around looking at cupboard space and stuff. It's not going to matter if something big is broken. So first, I always immediately pull every bilge board and I check the keel bolts. On this Beneteau, for example, it has keel bolts. And on Beneteaus, you particularly want to inspect, they call it the stringer matrix. It's at the back end of the keel in the bilge. It's a series of stringers that are glassed in. If a keel is going to fall off on a Beneteau, this is where it's going to fail first. And is that bilge free of oil and anything else that doesn't belong there? What's the state of the bilge pump? What does the wiring look like? Expect some water in the bilge because almost no boat is completely dry, but it shouldn't be stained from long-term sort of stale water sitting there growing algae. And while you're inside, we're going to attack the engine next. And like we said last week, does it look like it's got 6,000 hours on it? That's about the life expectancy of a diesel that's been well cared for. Is there oil pooling under it? Pull the dipstick for the engine and the transmission if it has one. Are the fluids fresh and clean? Or better yet, are they running low? A broker often forgets to check the oil before they show the boat. So if it's running low when you see it, how long's it been running low? If all that stuff passes the whole sniff test, you can then wander around exploring the things that you want to see, the less critical systems, the wiring on the AC and DC panel. Does the air conditioning work? Does the water run at all the taps? Check the plumbing, check the toilet, and check if the fridge and the freezer actually work. Make sure everything sort of looks right. And this is a big thing, don't be afraid to take pictures. Everybody forgets to do that. Oftentimes, you look at the boat for 2 hours and you get home and then you wish you took some pictures of certain points of interest. And all the excitement makes you forget. So don't forget. If something doesn't look right on the boat too, take a bunch of pictures of it. That way, when you can get home, you can sort of post them online into owners' forums and Facebook groups and see what other people think. Step 5. This is the last step in our process, and this was the one that seems to be the scariest for most people. How do you figure out what to actually offer? And then once you have an offer in your head, what are the next steps in the typical process when somebody buys a boat? And you usually are stuck with dealing with the seller's broker, so nobody's looking out for you. Lady K Sailing is brought to you by patrons, people who give a couple of bucks an episode to really make all these videos possible. I want to give a big shout out to all the existing patrons who have gotten us this far and keep us going. If you'd like to help out the channel, please consider becoming a patron. The next step is to discuss an offer with the broker, and that offer is of course going to be pending a survey. More on surveys in a minute. So let's take this Beneteau 343 we've been looking at as an example. We know that the asking price is $78,500, and from our research, they usually sell for anywhere from $80,000 to $95,000. And we did find one actually on Yacht World for $89,900 that is sale pending, which usually means it has an offer on it right now. Now that one for $89,900 that is sale pending is a little bit more pristine, judging by the pictures, than the one we're looking at. The engine is cleaner, the sails look brand new, It looks extremely well kept, and the fridge even has beer in it. This shows a lot of pride of ownership and value, maybe a little bit more than ours. But looking over our example boat, the price is already on the low end of the market for these boats. But we will want to highlight to the broker the things that we feel are going to cost us money to make the boat right. Let's say, for example, the fridge doesn't work, which is a good guess. I haven't seen this boat, but they do have a Yeti cooler on the settee, which makes me think there might be a problem with the fridge. But let's imagine for a second that it doesn't work. We figure the cost to fix the refrigeration is probably about $1,500, so we'd be comfortable making an offer that much less than their asking price. But let's also assume, to complicate it, that it also needs a new mainsail. We looked at the main, it just looks shot. And that main is going to run us about $5,000. So we might position ourselves to the broker that we're comfortable offering $4,000 less than the asking price. This way it shows that we're willing to eat some of the cost for a new mainsail and to fix the refrigeration if the owner, the seller, is also willing to eat some of the cost. And finding a middle ground like that is usually a really good way to get an offer actually up and rolling so a discussion starts going. And it shows the owner that you're not trying to rip them off and you're not playing games and you're not lowballing. You're just an intelligent boat shopper willing to meet them in the middle. Now, if the owner is willing to play ball with your offer, as you discuss with the broker, it's time for a survey. And your offer was made pending a survey, so no money has changed hands yet and nothing is on paper. Now you have to show up for a surveyor. The surveyor that you pick is going to be the first person in this process who will actually be working for you and in your best interests. And it carries a lot of weight. First and foremost, to insure this boat, you are going to need a survey. So let's talk about insurance for a minute. Now, sailboat, mostly cruising sailboat insurance, was going to be very hard to get at one point a few years ago, but all the rumors never actually came to fruition. They scared us all by saying that nobody was going to insure a boat worth less than $150,000. That didn't happen. Nobody's going to insure a boat that's older than a certain year. I think it was 1995 or something. And that didn't happen. None of this stuff happened. Now, all you really need is a clean survey that's less than 2 years old, and you can get sort of regional insurance on just about anything. And for people around here in North America, that regional insurance typically covers all of the Great Lakes and both coasts of Canada and the US, east and west, and typically all of the Bahamas. If you're going to be heading further than the Bahamas or Mexico, you will need to shop around a little bit to find proper cruising worldwide insurance. And that works anywhere that you intend to end up. And be aware that when you call like your local State Farm rep or whoever you're with, they likely won't know anything about sailboats or cruising insurance. Mine, for example, when I headed south, said they don't even offer sailboat policies until I pointed them at their website where it referenced them. Eventually, I got the right person on the phone and I got the deal done. I got the insurance I was looking for. But don't let them tell you that insurance isn't available. There are tens of thousands of people out there cruising right now, worldwide, that are fully insured. Now back to surveys. Shopping around for a surveyor can be difficult. There's no TripAdvisor or review system for surveyors. It's just basically Googling who's available as a surveyor in a certain area, and they have to be ABYC accredited and all that stuff. And then Googling their name many times to find reviews and anything else anybody has to say about that particular person. And often there's only 1, 2, maybe 3 of them in a major city, so your choices are kind of limited. Now, a proper survey will go over the entire boat with a fine-tooth comb, and they will look at every inch in this methodical and very professional way, including measuring the hull and deck for moisture and water intrusion. But this all comes at a cost, and usually it's over $1,000. By the end of that grueling survey, though, you'll receive a report, often laminated in a binder. It's very fancy stuff. That includes everything that the boat comes with, from spare parts and extra things to everything wrong with the boat and any of that stuff. It'll include any service records that they found and everything you could ever want to know about that particular boat. Also, the survey will include, and this is cool, a few examples of that model of boat that have sold in the last couple of years and what they actually sold for, not what they were listed at. and what equipment those examples of that boat had and what condition they were in, the surveyor will give you an astounding amount of data to help you understand the true value of the boat that you're looking at. I get a lot of people asking me for help looking at boats, so I decided to dedicate a page at ladyksailingcom where you can go if you want to book an hour of my time. If you need me, head on over to ladyksailingcom/consults. Now, armed with a comprehensive survey, knowing every inch of that boat, you call the seller's broker and the negotiations begin. Now, before the survey, the offer may have been $74,000 on a $79,000 boat, but now the survey has found a few things that you didn't, and it's going to help you sort of maneuver the price down a little bit. It gives you leverage, and perhaps there's a few electric tweaks or fuses, or perhaps it needs new through hulls or new sea cogs. Going from that survey and what the surveyor said the boat is actually worth, you can now work with the broker to come up with some sort of reasonable offer, and now you'll know everything you need to address when you do buy the boat if you end up buying it. And this is the part that's hard to walk away from. So now you're invested in this boat, both your time and your research, and you falling in love with it probably, and you really want it, and the cost of the survey. And the seller knows this. The seller knows you're sort of over a barrel now. They know you're serious because you footed the bill for the survey, which they now have a copy of, and they can use that to help sell the boat if you don't buy it. You have to be willing, though, to walk away at this point. And that sort of ties us back to the first part of this episode. It is critical that you look at as many examples of this boat and other boats like it as you can, so that you have a whole bunch of options and you don't put all your eggs in one floating basket. Also, your pre-inspection before you pony up the dollars for that expensive professional survey is very important. You don't have to spend 2 hours on the boat to find major deal-breaking problems. Remember the holy trinity of deal breakers: the sails, the standing rigging, and the engine. Are you willing to front 10 grand to replace any one of those things, or 30, 40, 50 grand to replace all three? I truly hope this episode has helped you guys. If you liked it, please let me know in the comments. If I missed anything, let me know. If you want a deeper dive into any part of this process, let me know in the comments. And if you need me directly, don't hesitate to book an hour. Until next time, guys, I will see you next week.